BCS Cologne just ended and I participated in it, so that means another tournament wrap up.
Stand up! Vanguard!
Hey Cardfighters, welcome back to a new video, and this is probably a new type of video that I want to introduce on the channel, where basically whenever I participate in a tournament, might it be a regional, a shop challenge, or maybe even a locals, I explain to you guys how the tournament went, what I played, against what I played, how I played against those matches, but basically to give you guys more information as well as a different angle about how to approach certain things in terms of matchups and gameplay, as just talking about a deck list and what the different combos are is one thing, but actually explaining how I went about in these different matches, how I approach being first or second and against a good matchup or a bad matchup. I think these things could be very informational and interesting for you guys out there. And with, of course, today we've got a big one, as we had a regional for BCS just out of Germany, and it was just finished, and it was a blast. And that is where I want to start the video, because the amount of support that I got from you guys and the love about what I do on this channel, but this time in real life, you guys approached me for just wanted to talk with me, sign some stuff, be doing a selfie. I loved every single moment of that, and it's really hard for me to express how thankful I am that you guys really enjoy the stuff that I'm doing here. And basically what I want to tell you, if you see me in one of these events and you want to say hi or whatever, just step up and just talk to me, because if you guys enjoy this stuff, I am just as happy as you guys that you are actually allowing me to do this for you guys. It really means the world to me, and at the same time it's really difficult to say how much I appreciate this, but at the same time apparently you guys appreciate it the same way for me. But just really walk up to me and just say hi, because I love the interaction that I can have with you guys in real life, and it just really means the world to me to actually see how people really enjoy the stuff that I do and put my work and effort into, because I love making this content. But with all that said and done, let's jump into the actual video with all the information about this tournament, which you actually put the video on for. So BCS Cologne, or BCS Germany, or BCS Cologne, or how we in the Dutch like to say BCS Keulen, was a double tournament for Vanguard. We had Premium and we had Standard. On the first day we had Standard, and on the second day, on Sunday, we had Premium. For the Standard side, we had a whopping 141 participants at the tournament. And for Premium, we had a total of 95 participants. A little bit lower, but that was to be expected, but still a pretty big number. So these are some good signs for both tournament formats as well as the participation rate within Europe. For American side, this might sound a bit low, but these are your typical numbers that we are come to expect in Europe. But not really for Premium, because the last time we had a Premium tournament, which I participated in, it was around the 60 mark. Now up to 95, that's a good sign. And you might have noticed that I just popped in some Twitter feed from my Twitter account, and basically if you follow me on Twitter, you might already know a lot of information that's gonna be in this video, as what I did on Twitter is I did a live feed of what happened in the tournament, my standings, my rounds, and a bit of information about what happened in that set round. And I'm gonna pop up these tweets on the video once I talk about specific rounds, which those tweets are referring to. So if you want to be up to date whenever I'm doing some event or I'm participating in a certain event, then follow me on Twitter, as that is the most ideal source to get it on the day, or basically on the spot, on the minute, to know exactly what is going on. And at the same time, you might be wondering, why are we having a face cam and not an actual playmat where I can show you the deck list? Well, there are two reasons, because I participated in Standard as well as Premium. For Standard, my build, you're actually familiar with that specific build, at least if you watched a other video on the channel, because I played Narukami in Standard, and I used a list that was already featured on the Narukami Spotlight. To be more precise, I used the second list, so the one with Detonix Drill as well as Gauntlet Buster Dragon. That was the list that I used for the Standard tournament, but I'm gonna pop it up on the screen once we're going into the Standard rounds and how I participate and how everything went. And for the other reason, that's basically my Premium deck list. It wasn't my own deck list. I borrowed a deck from a good friend, as well as some extra cards that I wanted to put into the deck, and I already gave those cards back to the respective owners at the end of the tournament, so I cannot show you guys the physical deck, what I use. I'm gonna pop up a screen with the deck list once I go into the premium segment, so you know exactly what I use. But for that, I use Gold Paladin, but a little bit different than the standard variant. Some people declared me for a fool or for crazy for using it, but I did pretty well if I be very honest about it. But let's go into the tournament results and start with standard. So for standard, I used Narukami, and as you're going to see here, this is the deck list that I use. A pretty standard list for me personally, as already showcased on the channel, of how you could approach using Gauntlet Buster Dragon in one of its most powerful forms with both support wave. Having Gauntlet Buster Dragon as well as the Tonics Drill Dragon in one build means that no matter what happened in the early game, once you're right up to grade 3, you're going to get a lot of value. Either you're gonna destroy your opponent's field with Gauntlet Buster, or you're going to get a pretty free restand thanks to the Tonics Drill because they didn't call anything, or if they called only a Vanguard booster, you can pull it out from the back row to the front row thanks to Bolt Capture Dragon. And that card did some work in standard tournament for me personally. Now let's go into the tournament with the rounds themselves and what happened during the tournament. So because we had 141 players, we were playing 8 rounds of Swiss, followed up with a top 8. Well, as you already might have known, I had a buy card that I won with Nova Grapplers, and I used that buy card in this tournament because I didn't know for sure if I would participate in another standard BCS. So I want to be sure that I at least get some value out of it, so I put it into this tournament. So that means first round, I didn't have to do anything. Second round, I also didn't do anything. So to be more precise, in the first round, I start walking around and watching other guys play against each other. Also watched Harv Hayawi from Crushing the Meta against another player. For some reason, they both got a bye because there was something wrong with the tournament schedule because somebody was late with registered and they didn't really register that correctly. So 2 people had a bye that could actually play against each other in the first round. So I watched them play in round 1. Round 2, I just went outside, get some drinks, get some, I think it's called currywurst, a German, I think a German typical snack, I think, because the thing was already open at 10 o'clock in the morning, so I think it's a snack. So yeah, I downed 1 down, so I had full energy when I went into round 3. So round 3, that's where the actual things started. And right at the bat, I need to play against a good friend or a known player from the Netherlands, and he was piloting Dimension Police. My memories about that match aren't that great because a lot of things happened, both tournament days, so I cannot really remember the details, but what I at least know is that he was going off. He had Liner as his Vanguard, he could search up to a grade 3 on his first ride, he also got the search successful off on his second turn, so meaning he was pressuring me with the crit and the extra power on turn 1, and on his second grade 3 turn, he had once again the crit and the extra power and could spear right into his ultimate Dimension Robo Great Dayusha. But in the early game, I had a good precision. I pushed him to very high damage very early on. I was sitting at significant lower damage at that point. I believe I was sitting at 1 or 2 damage. And then the following turn for him, when he was at his ultimate Great Dayusha, I knew that he didn't really have a lot of defensive value because he had a lot of Great Freeze, but because he wasn't sitting on Liner anymore, it wasn't really shield value for him at that point. But because of that, he had enough power to go from one ultimate Great Dayusha into another ultimate Great Dayusha. And for me, that was a tough situation because I was sitting at 3 damage. I knew he would swing in with 2 Vanguard attacks that were pretty hard to guard. They were about around 50 to 60k each. And he had 2 rearguards which would swing in for quite a significant amount of damage. And one, I believe, was a Platinum Ace that swinged with an extra crit. And with the amount of guard in my hand, there was no way for me to guard every single attack. And he had about 3 or 4 crits left in deck, and his deck wasn't really that big anymore. So I had to take a gamble to no-guard both his Vanguard attacks. So I needed to no-guard 4 drive checks. And for some reason, he was doing the same thing that Different Fight was doing at his live stream against the Draw the Trigger. And he drive checked no triggers. At least he drove check a draw, but that wasn't really enough to kill me. He needed to get a crit. So in 4 drive checks, 2 Vanguard attacks, he only got a draw, which allowed me to go safely from 3 to 4, from 4 to 5, and then I could guard the rest with the cards in hand, and then I could unload with a full board with the Gauntlet Buster Dragon and just went ham and won that game. So first round for me, round 3, I went 3-0. Then for round 4, I went up against Murakuma, and this is one of the matches that I had the least experience with in terms of playtesting, and that shows in this matchup, as in the early game, I gave him 1 damage each time, and he used that for a million red to copy and get some pluses, the typical thing that a Murakuma player would do. And then when we went up in our first grade 3 turns, I gave him 1 counterblast to work with, so he could use his VR skill to copy 1 unit onto the field and have some extra pluses. Then I went into my Gauntlet Buster and pressured him with multiple crits, and I basically wanted to stall him for the game, so he couldn't really do much plays, and he either needed to take my Vanguard and potentially die, or do nothing with his counterblast, because I kept him on only 1 counterblast for that turn. Well, what happened then is he guarded my Vanguard with a perfect guard. I then swinged him with, I was thinking of swinging with my rear guards, but I didn't do that, so he didn't have a lot of pluses for that turn at all, as he only had 1 phase of counterblast. Then, when he went to do his grade 3, he did one of his things, used that second counterblast, so at that point he was sitting at 2 face down counterblast and nothing else. He pressured me a little bit, I guarded against it, and then I basically took my stance of just attacking with Vanguard and just keep going until he couldn't guard anymore, and then kill him over with 1 fell swoop. And so I attacked with my Vanguard. He needed to hard guard it with triggers from hand, so he put 2 heals and a crit to, I believe it was a 2 to pass, or no, it was a no pass, so I couldn't go through it, but because he did that, that told a sign to me, so alright, he has no perfect guards in hand, so if I can survive his next turn, then I should be Gucci. I should be able to beat him over, and then it would be done. And with 0 counterblast, I was skeptical of how much pressure he could amount to against me, even though I didn't really have that much hand size. I was sitting at 4 damage, so I couldn't really take a lot of damage at that point. So I was thinking I could have this match. What I didn't foresee was that he would ride a Shiryuki, use the skill, and called another Shiryuki to the Vanguard circle and used its skill, and then unload his entire hand onto the field and just bash me for insane numbers. And I was sitting at minus 3k, so there was no way for me to even try to survive this. The only way for me to survive was getting a defensive trigger on my 5, and then a miracle heal trigger on my 6, and then I could survive the turn. Well, what happened? You could already guessed it. I didn't get any trigger, so that was my round 4, so I lost that. I went 3-1 for that round. Then for round 5, I once again went up against somebody I knew, and he was using the Bermuda Triangle Melody build, and he was using the one with Sonata, so he had no Chocolate Lieselot in his build. And yeah, this was a pretty ugly game in the sense that what happened wasn't really that clean on the Bermuda Triangle player side, because I could do my rush first, so I went first and I could overwhelm with a lot of attacks. I could use my Cho over restand. But what happened was, at my grade 2 turn when I started attacking, his first 2 damage were both Sonata. So Sonata went into the damage zone. Then I went to grade 3 and got my free restander off, and what happened then was that he once again took 2 damage, and those were Fina and Fina. So 2 Sonatas and 2 Finas were right into the damage zone, and there wasn't really a lot left in his deck. Then he rode up to his grade 3, he could ride up to one of his Sonatas that he still had left, he could call at least a column with his Fina in the front row to intercept potentially, and he had 2 Caros in the back row, and that was everything. He had 2 columns, and not really that much, and when he was resolving Sonata's skill, he almost went through his entire deck to see one melody unit, because I slammed it all to the damage zone, and he also had a lot of in hand at that point. So yeah, that was really awkward at that point, and I could guard his 2 attacks very easily at the point, because it wasn't really that high of numbers and it was only 2 attacks. And then I rode up to Gauntlet Buster Dragon and I proceeded to beat FaZe for that point, and that was game. So round 5, I won that one, so it was 4-1. Then round 6, once again I needed to face up against Murakuma, and this was one of my unluckiest matches of the day, as my opening hand was 3 grade 1s and 2 heal triggers. So that wasn't looking all too pretty for me, and I also went second, so that wasn't really that great. Luckily for me, I top decked a grade 2, so I didn't have to G assist for grade 2, but I needed to G assist for grade 3, sadly. I did went into Gauntlet Buster by the G assist, and luckily for me, my opponent also didn't have the ideal hand, so his first ride was into the rare something new Joe, and it didn't really pressure me all that much in the early game, but besides that, I also couldn't really pressure that much, and then when he went into his second ride, and that was his VR, he could basically eliminate my entire field, and also my entire field was only grade 1s. I could only fetch back the Rising Phoenix, because that was the only silver lining from my point of view. My grade 1s were Rising Phoenix, so I could guard with my Rising Phoenix and at least get it back when I used my Gauntlet Buster turn, but once again, my tactic to damage deny them didn't really pay off, and when he did his Yuga turn and put everything bottom deck, he unloaded once again with a lot of units onto the field, and I was counting numbers and I could potentially guard it, but then he got a front trigger, and that was basically GG from that point onward. So at the end of round 6, I went 4-2. Then for round 7, I went up against Messias, so Link Joker Messias, and he went first, but he needed to G assist for grade 1. And when he needed to G assist for grade 1, I immediately saw his hand and I knew what was up. He didn't have his Messiah in hand. He did have the grade 3 support grade 3 that could lock something, and that isn't ideal for his right target. And for grade 2s, he only had the one that could potentially counter charge or could potentially soul charge when he bound a grade 2 or higher, and the Lady Better of Gravity Well. Because he G assists away the grade 2 that could potentially bind something, I knew I was safe when I unload with my grade 2 turns, because he couldn't really pressure me back with potentially minusing me for free binding. And because of that, I could dictate the rest of the pace of the game, and also because he was forced to ride into the grade 3 that couldn't actually plus him all that much, and his grade 2 wasn't really that eventful with his grade 2 pressure turn. And I believe I got a lucky crit on the early game, so he was already sitting at 5 damage when he went up to his grade 3 turn. But I was sitting at 2, and he was using Force 2 on his Vanguard, so his Vanguard would always swing with 2 crits. And I didn't know how good of a offense I could build up for my turn to potentially kill him that turn, so I was getting a little bit risky, and I no-guarded his Vanguard attack. He got Twin Drive, and if both were crits, I would have been out at that point. And his first drive check was a crit, so I was sweating a lot at that point, but luckily his second drive check was empty, so I went from 2 to 5, and from that point onward, I just slammed a lot on the board, and I just went with Gauntlet Buster. I just swinged with it for high numbers and a lot of crits. He took the past it, and I went crit, heal, and then I swing for, I believe, 4 crits, and that was game for that point onward. Then for the final round, it basically had the same premise, but it was a quick one, because I went up against Murakumo once again, and this time it was a Zambaku variant, and it went a little bit different, because I knew he had the Zambaku, I was scared, because my hand was only triggers and 3 grade 3s. So I needed to right into the Tonic's drill, I pressured him with it, I put him to 3 face-up damage, because it was the only thing I could do, and I bet that he couldn't stun lock me. And for some reason, he couldn't. He could not even force me to not ride. He didn't have both arresters available, so the only thing I could do was Superior Call a arrestor, and that's about it. So the following turn, I could ride once again, this time to Gauntlet Buster, because I didn't want him to give any more counterblast. I didn't want him to give 3 open counterblast. He used 1, and that was about it. I'm only giving him 2 from that point onward. So I swing with Gauntlet Buster, and he guarded it, and then he ran into a new Zambaku, and I knew that he had that one. But once again, he could not stun lock me to not force me to ride once again. So he called another arrestor. He built a sizable field to pressure me a little bit, but it wasn't enough. So I could ride once again another Gauntlet Buster, and I could pull his central arrestor, which was behind his Vanguard, back to the front row thanks to the grade 1 Bolt Capture Dragon, then immediately destroy his entire front row, which he called last turn with Gauntlet Buster, and swing with a 5 crit Gauntlet Buster, and he took to pass me just like the previous game, and I got a draw and a crit, and that was 6 damage to face, and that was game. So for standard, I went 6-2, and my end standing was the 12th position. So I got 12 out of 141. Sadly, not top 8, but at least I can be happy with a 12th place. Now for premium, this is a little bit different and probably a lot quicker than the standard variant, as I was using Gold Paladin, and the Gold Paladin list that I used was this one. Yes, I was using 14 grade 3s. I was using 4 Blonde SLs, 4 Ravenhair SLs, from which one is the old Revival Collection Ravenhair. I used 2 Platina and 4 Sakra Moors. For the grade 2s, I only used 4 Bowmains and 4 Wonder SLs, and it's the old Wonder SL, so I could superior ride a lot of SLs when I go into my grade 3 turn, or if I wanted to combine Platina with a spare cross. And for grade 1s, the only one that counts are 4 of the Hoels, and it's the old one, so I could counter charge and soul charge. Also 4 Din Range for more counter charge capabilities, and only 2 of Gareth. The only reason why I run 2 is just in case for 1 is sent to the damage zone. And the reason why 2 is enough is that not a lot of people tend to rush you when you're a Gold Paladin, so the amount of damage you're going to get is probably only 1, so you don't have to be afraid of both being sent to the damage zone. And of course, I also run 1 copy of the old Kriv, but in main deck. So I use the new Kriv as a starter and the old Kriv in my deck to potentially draw it on my opening hand. And that did happen. So yeah, it's a useful card to even run in your main deck. And for triggers, of course, I run 8 crits, 4 heals, and 4 draw RPGs. All were V triggers because I wanted to get the extra power whenever I get damage checked, or whenever I'm using it as in my drive checks, because I need the extra power. Also, the reason why I run a lot of grade 3s is because Sakra Moor is just so important to easily attain Unite, because it's 1 card from hand, and I can, with that 1 card from hand, I could attain Unite. And also, because I use the old Wonder SL, I want to have as much SLs in deck to be able to successfully use that skill on a very consistent basis, and also grab me the card that I want to either go for Ultima on a more consistent basis, because what I tend to do is when I ride to my normal Blonde SL and I use my Wonder SLs, I search out Blonde SLs the first couple of times, because I'm probably going to end up on Ravenhair or Platina SL, so I want to keep those copies in my deck, so potentially I could draw them and then discard them for Ultimate Stride. If I went through all the SLs randomly, the chance of getting a similar Persona cost copy for Ultimate Stride would be down very, very significantly. And for G-Zone, it's very standard, as I run 2 of the SL Stride, just in case I went on to Link Joker. Spoiler alert, I did. And I also run 2 of the Gurgits that give me a quad drive in case somebody damage deny me and I have no counterblast face up. That's a free +1 that I would get, and thanks to Sakra Moor, it's even easier to attain. I also run 1 of the old Gurgit, and it might sound odd to run that one, but in case when somebody rushes me, I can use that skill and then go nuts. I can attack with an insane high-powered field, and my opponent cannot bet on defensive triggers, because everything will keep hitting even though you will get defense triggers. And combining that with the old Platina SL, where my opponent can only use grade 1s to defend, and especially since a lot of decks now use the grade 0 PGs as well as the protect markers, those won't work because those aren't grade 1s. So combine those 2 together, you can go nuts. And of course we have 2 spare cross that are very obvious for why we run them, and the rest are just fill-in cards. We have 2 Glorious Raining Dragon. I never used that in this tournament because I was never in the situation to use it. Ultima, I did use it once, but mainly only because I got Ultima, so I want to retaliate with Ultima, but it wasn't really needed to use Ultima. And the rest are the G-Guards, and it's basically the 2 old G-Guards, the 2 Slay Me Flares, and the Flip G-Guards. But I believe I only used 1 Slay Me Flare in the tournament, and I used 1 of the old one just because I wanted to have the extra shield, and I wanted G-Guard, but I could also use the normal 20k shield, because upping your G count isn't really that important unless you want to go in Ultima, and that's about it actually for the G-Zone for Gold Paladin. So now to go up into the matchups, we of course had 95 people, so meaning we were playing 7 rounds of Swiss. So in the first round I didn't have a buy card, so in the first round I went up against a player, and I went up against Neo Nectar, Token Rush, and yeah, I went into this tournament with zero expectation, as I just borrowed the deck and built the deck the night before, and I don't really play premium all that much. But this round wasn't a good precedent to set for the entire tournament, because I got rushed out of the tournament. This guy got everything that he wanted. He got the entire early rush, he got some lucky crits in the early game, and I could rush him back because I was sitting at 4 damage when he was reading up to his grade 3, because he did first. I didn't have my superior right, so I just was running normally, and the moment that I rode into my Ezel, that's the moment that I went ham, because I went Ezel, I went Wonder Ezel into another Ezel, Wonder Ezel into Platinum Ezel, Counterblast for Platinum Ezel, Counterblast 2 for Spare Cross, and then I went insanely aggressive against him. I threw my entire hand onto the board to just forcefully push everything out of him, and I would have won at that point, because he couldn't guard. Was it not for a heal trigger that went successfully off? Because at the end of that turn, he was sitting at 5 damage with only, I believe, 2 grade 3s and a 10k shield left in hand. If he didn't have that heal that went off and give him the extra 10k power so he could use 3 crits to guard 3 last attacks, that would have been the end of him and I would have won the turn. But then he went into Katrina. I could survive that turn. There was potentially for me to survive it, but only if he got 1 crit and that's about it. But when he attacked with his Vanguard, he got crit heal, and that was GG RNG for me. So round 1, I was done. I was X1, I was 0-1, and that was for me the moment like, is it gonna be such a tournament? So I went up in round 2, and round 2 I went up against DI. And DI is not really a deck that I want to face at all, because a friend of mine that also was participating in this tournament, DI, really gave me post-traumatic stress syndrome of the clan, because I do not like to play DI again when he's using DI. So I went up against DI, and once again I got second, and I did not get my superior right off. So two games in a row, went second and no superior right. And once again I got rushed, but I once again could fire back with a triple rewrite into Platinum SL and then basically go Spear Cross. And to pressure him, because I know pressuring a Dark Regular player when he got a lot of counterblast open can be your own death sentence if he survives. But his setup in the early game wasn't that great. He got a bricky hand, so I was betting on the chance that if I push him hard enough and force a lot of cards out of his hand, I could limit the amount of options he would available in the endgame. I did push him to 5 damage, I pushed out a lot of cards in hand, and when it was his turn, he was still forced to strike with 2 grade 2s, and even then, he almost killed me. And that really cemented for me how dangerous Dark Regulars is as a clan. With only a couple of cards, even when breaking, they could potentially kill you. Because he went into an NOK turn with Gastille, and he could rewrite into a Master 5th Element, and he could swing with multiple times, and he had a yellow bolt that was pretty dangerous. It had a lot of power on itself, so I had a couple of attacks that I needed to guard, and it was limited in the amount of guard value that I had. But when he attacked first with his finger with NOK, I had more information about, alright, this is the amount of damage I'm going to get, and this is what I need to guard. And I calculated a lot of things, and this is where a funny thing happened during the match. I had enough to basically guard his first Master 5th Element for a no pass, then PG his Master 5th second attack, and I could guard his yellow bolt because he already attacked with it once, so I could guard with it and still have cards left in hand during my turn to either go into a Spare Cross or to just normal stride with a grade 3. But for some reason, I wanted to take a gamble and wanted to do a 2 to pass with 15k shield 2 to pass, meaning in my mind, it's a 2 to pass standard-wise for 2 10ks. But because we're playing premium and he was using old heal triggers and old stand triggers, it was enough if he got a 5k and a 10k because he just needed a 15k to go over. But we both confirmed it's a 2 to pass. His first dry check was a heal trigger, a old one, and we both were on the assumption that, alright, it will not go through because it's not enough. It was an old trigger and it's not enough to get to the pass. So he put the trigger power onto his yellow bolt. Then he got a draw trigger, a new one, 10k, put it onto the yellow bolt and draw a card. Then when he swinged with his yellow bolt, he realized and then conveyed it to me. And then I realized what a gamble I made is that it was enough to break through. So Because of that luck, and for some reason a misplay on both our part, I survived the turn and then I could go into a Gurgit, the Gurgit that could power up the entire field, and then went end for game. Also, at the end of the game, he clarified that actually there was no reason for him to not put the power onto his Master 5th Element, because the Master 5th Element would restand anyway, so you get more value out of the power. That is true, but at the same time, I could make it a no to pass and then perfect guard his Master 5th with the perfect guard that I had left in hand, meaning I could even easier guard his yellow bolt because it didn't have the extra power of the 15k triggers. But that was round 2, and that was a 1-1 for me. Now round 3, I went up against a gold mirror, and this one was insane. I went first, and I got a superior right chain. I went ham. When he was still grade 1, I was using Platinum ASL on full power and was pressuring him hard. And he needed a G assist for his grade 2. And then I saw his entire hand. He didn't even have a grade 3. So I was thinking, I'm good here. But then he got his Wonder SL as a grade 2, and he did has Howell, so he was using the new Wonder SL and the new Howell, so he could then go into his Ezel and then go into a Sparrowcross. So he could immediately stride further, and he used, for some reason, the Unite version of stride. He could normal stride because he had a stride fodder, but he didn't use it like that, so I don't know what the reason was that he went for that line of play. He didn't really attack me at that point, because what happened was he gave me 1 damage, because that's the reason why I could use Platinum SL. But during my turn of Platinum SL, I got a heal trigger that went off because he was sitting at 1 damage. So at that point, I was sitting at 0 and he was sitting at 3. And from that point onward, he didn't want to attack me at all. He just went for rear guards, and that was everything. So he went for rear guards, and I went for his face, because when he ended his turn, I only lost a couple of rear guards, and that was about it. And I went in my turn, I strode into the Gurgit that gave me another dry check because it doesn't cost any counterblast. And I just went face, I got a crit so I could push him to 5. And then it was his turn, and he did G-guard, so he could go into his Ultima. So he went to his Ultima, and I could immediately see what his tactic was going, because there was one lucky part on my side, and that was the fact that he could only ride once in his Ezel, so he had only 1 Axle Circle. I, at this point, had 4 Axle Circles. I got 3 thanks to the Platinum ride, and when I went into my second stride into Gurgit, I first rode into Ravenhair to get another Axle Circle and another draw before I strode. So I had 4 Axle Circles, he had 1. He went into his Ultima, he attacked first with rear guards, so I knew he had a crit and a stand. Being at 0 damage, I knew he could never kill me with his Ultima attack, so I took this Vanguard attack. He got a crit and a stand and nothing else, so I got 2 damage. I took another rear guard, so I went to 4, could G-guard 1, and just guard another attack normal, and that was the end of turn. I have now 4 damage, I had 4 Axle Circles, I rode once again, get a 5th Axle Circle, then ultimate stride into Ultima, called an entire full field. I had a lot of great frees, I had like 7 rear guards standing, put 2 crits on top of my deck with Ultima, and then I just went nuts. I just went for face. He could never guard everything because everything got plus 20k, and I also got a front, so everything got plus 30k with 3 crits, and that was game. So round 3, 2, 1. Then round 4 I went up against a good friend. He was using the Murakuma loop. This is a game I honestly do not want to talk about because this was the game of misplays on both parts. As you probably already can see on the tweet here, for some reason, I needed G assist for grade 1, and that isn't really a problem. I built the deck on the fact that I was going to G assist for grade 1. The only thing that mattered was getting bow main, superior right, and go on. I didn't care to -1 in the early game. I needed G assist for grade 1. I got my grade 1, but I did have my right chain. I had bow mains and I had Ezel in hand. So I was like, this is going to be great. But for some reason, I thought I had 2 Ezels in my hand, so I G assisted away a crit trigger and an Ezel. Then when I did that, I looked at my hand and saw that I had no Ezel in hand, so I was stuck. But when I attacked, I got the old Criff in my drive check, so my deck was like, don't worry brother, I come to rescue you. I now have bow mains and an old starter in my hand, so that was enough to superior ride and even set up my soul for potential future plays. So I was like, yes, this is going to be great. I do have still 1 Gareth in my deck because I G assisted into a Gareth. In hindsight, that wasn't really a smart play because I could choose a 7k, but because he was sitting at an 8k, I wanted to pressure him a little bit. But lessons learned. So I was like, I still have 1 left in deck, it's gonna be fine. Then he went up to his grade 2, attacked me, I said no guard, could no past it, and there went Gareth into the damage zone. So I was stuck on grade 2, could not superior ride to grade 3 from deck, and I had no grade 3 in my deck, in my hand. So once again, I need the G assist for grade 3. So I minus once again, get no pressure. That was everything I could do. I didn't even have a Wonder Ezel in hand to keep superior riding, so I was stuck on one Ezel with 1 Exo Circle that I couldn't really abuse. Attacked, did my thing, turn ends, and I knew I was dead because he probably could infinite loop me at this point and I was done. He did have the entire loop in his hand, but he made a vital mistake of not putting the stand trigger hidden scroll back into his deck to sustain the loop. Because what happened was he drawn already 3 copies of hidden scroll into his hand and the 4th one went into his damage zone. So I got some luck by rushing him a little bit in the early game by sending that thing into the damage zone, and he made the misplay of not using that one correctly, and he couldn't kill me that turn, and I could basically recuperate my infinite losses that I made in the early game, could pressure him enough that he needed to waste his entire hand to basically try to survive. So he couldn't loop me the following turn. I survived his next turn, and then I went and killed him with the following stride. So round 4, I went 3-1. And it's a round that I honestly don't want to talk about anymore. And then we have round 5, and that was against a Link Joker player, a Chaos with a spicy Glendios tag. And this was a nasty match because I went first, I got my superior ride off, didn't went into multiple, so I only went into Blunt SL and then and it was a Blunt SL with the old curve because he was looking at my starter and he was like, could you actually play curve as a starter? I was like, yes, you can play the new one, but you cannot play the old one. And then I basically answered his question by calling the old curve onto the field and using it to superior ride, and then went into Ezel. It was a little bit nasty, but my deck went off at that point. So I had Twin Drive on my Vanguard, attack for face very early on, then he went into his grade 2, couldn't really do anything, then I strode into Helios because I didn't really have a counter blast to spare, got quad drive, attack for a lot, but at this point I only had 1 Axel Circle, and I did it with on purpose because at the following turn he's going to lock stuff, and I wanted to keep myself, have some options left when he started locking stuff, and I only had 1 Ezel's try to unlock stuff, but he already showcased a Glendios in his early drive check, so I knew if he was putting me at that win condition, I need to save that last stride to deny him that win condition. Even though if he go into the new Global Avalanche and I retire my own field, I would take that over an instant loss. So I kept saving that stride. Then he went into the old Chaos Breaker Atlanti to lock some stuff from me. And I had 1 front row circle locked and 1 Axel Circles locked. And I didn't really have counterblast to spare because he really wasn't giving me a lot of counterblast. So what I did was I didn't strode. I just went into another Ezel, used Wonder Ezel to call another Ezel, then Wonder Ezel, another Ezel, and basically built 3 extra Axel Circles. Wanted to use Platinum Skill, but I missed the timing because I already tapped a rear guard, and when I want to rewind that, he basically called me out on that I couldn't do it because I missed the timing, so, and a fair play on him because I honestly did. So I just went into Platinum Cell without the skill of Platinum Cell, but I did pressure him a lot with a lot of attacks, put him to 5 damage, put him to 5 damage, and then he went into a glue ball, and he made a bet to not flip a glue ball. And the reason why he didn't do that is because he thought I didn't run the Ezel stride. Because apparently not every Ezel player is running the Ezel stride. I don't know why you shouldn't, because it's free space. So he did make that bet, locked my entire front row, and attacked me. I did no guard and took some damage, survived, and then I strode into that Ezel, unlocked everything, and went face. And that was the end of the Link Joker player, and I went 4-1. Then for the 6th round, I once again went up against Token Rush, and this time my deck was coming for a vengeance, because holy crap, that was nuts. I went first, I got the Superior Right Chain, but I got the entire package, because on turn 1, my opponent, when he went to his grade 1 and could attack, he was hesitant of giving me that 1 counterblast or not. by doing some talking with him and basically doing some mind games and all that stuff, he eventually decided on attacking me. I, of course, take no guard, took the damage, and then I went off. I superior right into another Wonder Cell, into another Wonder Cell, into Wonder Cell. I have Platinum already, counted +1, and I believe I got 2 triggers. I think I got a crit and a front, but it doesn't really matter because I pushed him insanely hard. And he was already sitting at 4 or 5 damage at the end of that. Then he rode into a grade 2, called a grade 2, then he attacked a couple of times, I guarded it, took some damage, and that was about it. And then I strode, and it was done. It was done. There was no way he could even try to survive that. And the only thing he did in the game was he rode 1 grade 1, he rode 1 grade 2, he called a grade 2, and that's about it. He was allowed to play 3 cards the entire game, not counting Guardians. So yeah, that was nasty. Then we up into round 7, and this is a controversial match. I went up against Dark Regulars once again, and this was an interesting list as he was using Hope on Damp as a finisher. So he has Brufus, and he had no left king, and he was using Hope on Damp. The early game wasn't really that ideal for me. I believe I went second, but I bricked pretty hard, had no superior right chain. I believe I even needed the G assist, but I'm not sure on that part. And so I had a really slow game. He also was unlucky at some point as he was soul charging a lot of grade 3s or losing a lot of grade 3s because 2 no left kings went into the soul early game and 2 Brufus went to the damage zone early game, meaning if he went into Castile, he didn't really have a lot of options left to soul charge them. So I was betting on that to maybe give me a glimmer of hope to survive this game. But in the late stage of the game, when he suddenly starts soul charging a lot of cards and he basically went for his end game, there was a mishap what happened with him placing a card onto the field face up. So I presumed he called the Hope on Damp while he still had 19 cards in soul. Apparently that was not his intention. I basically wanted to have a judge come to the table and clarify what was happening. The judge made a ruling. They reverted this situation because it wasn't really clear of what happened, and we as both players couldn't come out to a solution. So the judge reverted the situation and he could allow to play his turn correctly. And basically because of that, I came 5k short to guard, died that turn, and I went 5-2. And with that, I sadly didn't make top 8, and I ended up at 15th position. So I went 12 on the first day for standard and was 15th on the second day for premium. Also, a great thing about this tournament for premium is that Dave also features on his channel, and the one that allowed me to borrow is the Nova Grappler deck, which I got to buy for standard. He got 9th place, so fair play to him. But even bigger is that a good friend of mine, and also featured on this channel pretty early on with other fight matches video that we got a long time ago, Chris, he managed to get 2nd place. Sadly, he did not win, but he went up against a notorious, powerful player in the community, and I am very proud of him being able to get 2nd place. I'm a little bit jealous, of course, because everybody wanted to win, but I'm way more proud of him to be able to get 2nd place and to be able to represent us as a community from the Netherlands at Worlds once again. And I'm very excited for him to be hopefully attending the tournament because he needed to see if he can able to make it, but I hope he can. And let's hope that we're going to be sending even more people from the Netherlands because there is a couple more tournaments in the European sector, and maybe I'm going to attend the one for France, but I'm not 100% sure, but I'm trying my best to make it, and I'm probably going to do another one of these videos for telling you guys how the tournament went. So for anybody that's still sticking around, because this video is insanely long and there's a lot of information to covering, thank you for watching, and there is a lot of coming to the channel because one thing is I finally got this thing in the mail. I can finally play Vanguard EX, and I'm probably gonna stream if my internet and my computer allows me to do it, because I don't have the best computer and I don't have the best of internets. So I'm trying to figure this out the coming days, and if I'm allowed and if I can make it work, I'm probably gonna stream on the weekends. Probably this weekend will then be the first stream if everything works out. So if you're interested in me playing Vanguard DX, then why not hop on the stream? I'm probably gonna put the stream, or at least my Twitch link, in the description down below if I made my Twitch account. Also, the easier thing to do is follow me on my Twitter account, and that's @MrTimeleap. There I will update the information once I made my Twitch account and make everything work. And I will also keep you posted on the Twitter when I'm going to be live streaming this game, and maybe potentially live streaming other stuff that will be on my Twitch account. And I think that's about everything for this video. Usually I'm more scripted, or at least more have a more idea of what I want to say in videos, but this was an insanely long video, and a lot of things happened this weekend. 2 big tournaments, regionals for standard and premium. My best friend getting 2nd place at a regional. It's like, Jesus Christ, it's a lot of information going on. So yeah, we're probably, the next video on the channel by tomorrow is probably going to be the regular format. So we're going to dive into the set reviews. I already done most of the editing for at least Shadow Paladin, Dark Regulars, Murkumo, and I'm now doing Pale Moon, and I'm busy with a lot of stuff. So yeah, that's probably the end of the video. I'm blabbering a lot of stuff right now. So as always, guys, I want to thank my supporters over at Patreon for making everything on the channel happening. And this time I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you for everybody that attended the regional in Cologne and came up to me to talk to me, wanted to sign something or making a selfie or anything like that. You guys are really amazing. And if you do want to support the channel and everything that's happening on the channel, you can simply do that by subscribing, hitting the bell button to be updated to more videos, liking the video, sharing it with all your Cardfight Vanguard fans. And if you want to do it a little bit more directly, you can go to patreon.com/VanguardInsider and become a Patreon today. Well, with that said, I'm Mr. Timeleap. I see you guys in the next one.